I must say that we also share a certain discomfort with the position of Government of India and the disconnect between what India says in international negotiations and how it translates into domestic actions and at ground level in India. That Soumyaji has already pointed out earlier in terms of talking about National Action Plan and State Action Plan on climate change. And the most worrying thing is that the Government of India is not keeping Parliament informed on whatever position which is evolving or which it is going to take. Till now, I believe there has been just one debate on climate change and India's international position. That was on 3rd December 2009 when India was going to participate in Copenhagen. After that, there has been no debate in the Parliament on India's climate change policy. And we are also trying our level best to sort of generate this Parliament and what is the basis for India's evolution of policies and lack of oversight on National Action Plan on climate change or State Action Plan on climate change, or even with regard to its position in international negotiation. So that's that. If you can stay back, we hope to have at least a couple of members from Parliament to take this discussion forward on India's response to climate change and domestic as well as international negotiations and its position. With this, we invite all the participants to share or raise concerns with regard to COP, and please try to be brief because we have little time, and please, before asking question, please introduce yourself briefly.
Thank you, sir, that you have highlighted, and I congratulate you for organizing such a conference, and also the African friends that they are organizing a conference there in the next few days. I would like to thank Mr. Hanuman Sharma, who is sitting just in my left side. He actually informed us that in South Africa a conference is going to be held. And we would like to participate. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm not an expert on climate, but I was working in the Madhya Pradesh as a professor, and I was always worried to think on these problems, on these issues. And when I was very small, I found a very favorite climate to me at that time when I was a child and when I was studying in the school and college. But after retirement from Madhya Pradesh Government Service, Education Service, when I went back to my rural areas, I find a lot of change, and climatic change has gone a very, very long change, and it is very, very important issue at present to consider and to think about this climate change. I have just read these two lines: the climate change, climate crisis, climate policy, and the discussions that my friend was talking that it should be discussed in the Parliament. I say it should not be discussed only in the Parliament. It should be discussed in all the civil societies, and they must come forward. If you want to make the change in the whole world, you have to think at the world level, and it is the duty of the civil societies to consider such an issue and to think and to organize such a conference which is going to be organized by South Africa. And I would like to thank and appreciate this effort which is being made at the world level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gurinderji, would you like to say something or share some concerns? Later. Manishi, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. My name is Manish Jain, and I'm head of mission for ACF Action Against France in India.
Why don't you take this chair? Since it's being recorded, it's important to speak in the mic, so we will give you a little trouble.
Thank you. My name is Manish Jain, and I represent ACF France in India. ACF works on issues of hunger and malnutrition in many parts of the world. And therefore, what I'm going to say is looking at climate change issues from the perspective of nutrition, or undernutrition rather. Just a few things before I come to the main point is that we all know that 1 billion people go hungry in the world every single day. This kind of international. Second is that India has 42% of all undernourished children in the world. And one other thing is that out of about 2 million children with severe acute malnutrition, more than 800,000 are in India. And we also know that with the projections on climate change as to how by 2050 there will be a rise by 20% in the number of undernourished children as compared with a world without such climate changes. So this is all extremely serious from those children who are undernourished and who are severely, acutely malnourished, and who have 9 times more probability to die than a normal child. We also know that how climate change will completely reshape the humanitarian development situation around the world. We also know that how recent COPs 15 or COP 16, the kind of accords that have reached there have been not legally binding, have been very vague or ambiguous, and therefore my request to all those delegates from this group who will be going to Durban in the next few days is primarily that please make nutrition a priority, because nutrition as a sector has not been a priority in the UNFCCC as well as in the recent COPs. We want to appeal that any future agreements on CCA aim at both protecting and promoting food and nutritional security by taking relevant actions for those who are most marginalized, by those who are most affected. We would also want to say that please ensure that climate change adaptations and climate change mitigation measures are of equal priority, and that mitigation measures will not undermine abilities of poor people to feed themselves. And one more suggestion is for donors, is that provide long-term funding to scaling up nutritional activities, especially with respect to from the climate change perspectives, and also doing more research which can link climate change more strongly with undernutrition issues. So this is my humble appeal to all those delegates who will be going to Durban to take undernutrition more seriously, and I'm saying this from the concerns of all those children who are malnourished around the world and in India, and all those who are concerned with these children. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Those are addressed to either High Commissioner of South Africa. Naga, would you like to ask something? Say something?
My name is Nagraj, and I'm with an organization called Delhi Platform. So I referred to a work on impacts of climate change we've done in Gujarat. I have a few copies of the report here. My comment is a somewhat broader one. As an organization engaging with the global warming issue and looking at it as a frame, we've looked at the issue as one that is centrally rooted in essentially in industrial capitalism. And somewhere when there are two frames here, I think the core frame is broadly a nation-state frame, and that frame is reflected in some of the comments and some of the observations that have come up this afternoon. For instance, the comment from the EU representative that if the US were not on board, then not just would it mean less cuts, it also means that their industry would relatively benefit more. And this is just an example. But overall, the frame of these COP negotiations are essentially nation-state frames. And sometimes we are trapped in that. We're trapped looking what is essentially a systemic problem, one of industrial capitalism. As an example, it's not an accident that China is leapfrogging over everybody else in terms of its emissions. It's at least 1 billion tons more than the second, which is the US, you know. And it's part of that logic. That logic is cheap energy, cheap labor, etc., which is part of the system. Now my point is, how do we actually have a dialogue between these two frames? I don't see that happening so far. I don't see it, certainly not in CDM, certainly not in some of the other ways in which it's happened so far in 17 COPs. What are the issues that one can bring forward such that some kind of dialogue is possible between a nation-state frame and a frame that addresses more systemic issues?
I'm Gopal Krishna from Toxics Watch Alliance. I will be, just pursue the line of argument which Nagaraj just mentioned. The councillor from South African Embassy just mentioned that in passing about the Security Council, and there have been 2 debates in Security Council on climate, and it appears that climate agenda which is caught up in the nation-state framework is destined to go that route of debating it as a security issue. And it is not surprising that the UN Security Council discussed it in April 2007 and then discussed it in July 2011. So I think this nation-state frame is indeed the reason why it appears that this agenda is being pushed while adopting a national security narrative towards the Security Council. We are really concerned that next year there will be no Kyoto Protocol as such. But my question is to Mr. Mark Reinhardt, that is it a possibility that if nothing materializes in Durban, will something happen at Rio 10 in June 2012?
Rio
Yeah,
20.
Yeah, Rio 20. Is it a possibility that this negotiation can be carried forward? Because as of now, from the positions, because there are a well-entrenched position of the countries, there is a climate nationalism which we see unfolding, and it has been unfolding for a long time. That will something come out, or if nothing comes out of Durban, will some hope will still be there at the Rio 20 meeting? Thank you.
Hello, myself Piyush Mahapatra. I am from Toxics Link. I think we have discussed a lot on how the corporation and what is the local and CDMA. But I know it's after Kyoto Protocol the things have shifted and the whole politics of economy, which is being now the prime focus on this whole climate change negotiation. But I would like to some of the issues which are working, and we are now realizing that most of the issues like chemical safety issues, which is a very predominant, and there is a direct linkages between the issues. So we need to, I think, European delegates are there from different countries, and also we have the civil societies. We need to renegotiate more on to divert funds towards more on the scientific studies on various impact of the like chemicals, health, and environment as such. And I think our civil societies also need to negotiate more on the academics and in their respective level, mostly in the ground level, so that we can have a proper scientific background to put pressure on the government, and also we can have a better say at the international level. So I think these issues of more research funded instead of putting on adoption and mitigation, we should to divert on the some basic research how the climate change is impacting at the ground level on the health, environment, and other chemical safety related issues. So I think there need some innovative approach to have to address these challenges in the coming days. So that's all.
Thank you. We completely understand that there is need for more scientific documentation. Yeah.
Okay, just 2 or 3 or 4 comments rather than questions. I was looking at what you sent out to us in the invitation to this event, And you mentioned that there will be at some point some discussion also, about the critical areas or the hot spots within India, and I think you identified Himalayas as one, and I think it's an excellent example. I mean, if we are looking at the country or nation state as the starting point, and then moving to regional and global levels, and so I mean, the Himalayas I see them as a very huge sponge. The moment they have the trees and vegetation on them, they are a sponge. The huge amount of precipitation taking place in the form of snow gets absorbed by the Himalayas, and then it is released very slowly, that water, to form in the form of rivers, streams, nalas, and little things, which sustain the subcontinent, large parts of the subcontinent. And if this very major ecosystem in the north is going to get disturbed because the glaciers are going to melt, because of climate change, and there are developmental interventions locally in terms of hydroelectric, hydropower projects, which are even envisaging, there are proposals to divert the rivers right from the glacier itself, and not just downstream putting dams, and it has already happened, on the Satluj and Bias rivers, in the stretch which passes through Himachal. And large parts of the river are now underground, turning the turbines, and then out they come, flow for a kilometer or two, again they go underground, again they are harnessed for turning the turbines to produce hydro. And the targets that have been set, taking it from like the current level to threefold, and threefold is up to say 20,000 megawatts or whatever, kilowatts, however they define it. But it's 3 times in the next 10 years is going to again dramatically change what the scene that we see today, and other states are going to follow. So I think I'm very much concerned about this barrier in the north, which has been protecting us, and then it's going to impact agriculture and everything else that we have heard about. With regard to the coastline, again, the rise in the sea level and the disruption and dislocation of life of communities who live along the coast and who are dependent on the sea is another major concern, and also the effect on their livelihoods, and what's going to happen, and how the communities are either going to disintegrate or dislocate, and the whole migration issue, which with its rehabilitation needs and the legal issues that are involved when, for example, it is anticipated if Bangladesh, large parts of Bangladesh get submerged, that there will be migration into India. And so I also heard people saying that it is, climate change is also majorly an internal security issue if it is going to be touching on migration patterns and food security and agriculture and all these, and are they really being viewed as an internal security issue if we say that all life needs to be safeguarded, that the safety and security of life is a primary concern of all of us. Again, I think last time I said this, and I do wish to repeat this, that when we are talking about agriculture, please, we must bring forth very strongly the impact on women, what's going to happen, because women are the primary foragers of food, water and fuel, what's going to happen to their lives, and are we consciously putting women's concerns and their problem up front when we are talking about the widespread impact on agriculture, because a huge number of livelihoods and people's survival is connected to that. And the last thing I wish to say is I quite agree with one of the other speakers. He said that there's a lack of a coherent and wholesome whole alternate paradigm for human survival and progress. And if we look at Durban as an opportunity, what kind of strategies are we going with collectively? Yes, in India, civil society perhaps would go with their own. Is there a way of collaborating and exchanging with other like-minded countries? I mean, I could from what I heard in the room, I could clearly see it could be India, South Africa, and Europe, and maybe other countries. If we are seeing eye to eye on certain things, why not the civil society organizations from these countries try and engage civil society in America and Australia and other countries to at least continuously dialogue and talk on these issues? And because ultimately it's the survival of all of us. It's not just those people who are today agreeing and those others who are not wanting to look at the Kyoto Protocol and other such mechanisms. Thank you.
Definitely the concerns that you have shared, all of us share collectively, and we have been trying to make the best use of opportunity of our presence in international conferences on climate change or social forum or any other intersessional that we have been going, and we have been trying to engage Indian civil society, not only itself in India itself, but also elsewhere, as well as trying to get attention of global civil society and official delegations on issues of agriculture, issues of legal architecture of climate change, and issues of state liability and responsibility. And we definitely look forward to take it further. In the series of sort of efforts like these, we are also trying to organize a side event on agriculture, climate smart agriculture, a myth or reality, on 3rd November on 3rd December in COP17, and we are assured of a representation from civil society groups from Africa and also other South Asian countries who will be definitely speaking on what are the impacts of climate smart agriculture and how this is being promoted in different countries. Yeah.
No, but what about people who don't agree with you? How about getting the Americans and Australians into the room?
Yeah.
The best is to try to attract attention of these groups by sending papers, flyers, by trying to invite them in our side events, by having submissions at UNFCCC. That is the only way that we think we can engage them in. Despite that, we have been also trying to engage with global media at different fora and trying to say whatever we say, how we see that agriculture is being impacted, how people are being affected in developing countries generally, and India particularly. So till now, that's been the effort that we have been making to make people listen who even don't agree with us. Anything you would like to add, Swamiji?
Better will be if others come in,
Yeah,
but just
yeah.
one pointer that, see, even in it's not that civil society from the north and civil society from the south do not interact. In fact, that happens as a regular process, whether it is a COP or whether it is other meeting. But what we can do to bring more sort of urgency into it, that is one question that has been haunting us, because there are climate justice groups all over the world, and they talk and they interact during the COPs, during intersessionals. One of the activities that we thought, I don't know whether it will be successful, whether it will come up, what we thought that we'll also do is the kind of proposals that, see, if you have seen, the meetings goes on mostly where it's closed door. And it's very clearly said, the parties, sometimes parties and press. So most of the meetings are closed for civil society, that is non-governmental groups, most of the meetings. So from last year, probably some of the meetings are being opened, and this year there is a push for more of those meetings to be opened partially. Don't know whether it will happen or not. But we were also thinking of how to bring this urgency from communities who are impacted. So one of the efforts that we are planning this year is whatever is being discussed there, like proposals on climate finance, proposals on parties working out of Kyoto, proposals on bringing agriculture into the market, carbon market, we'll also relay this to many of the community groups in India and possibly in Bangladesh. We don't have too much outreach elsewhere, and try to get their responses and bring those responses live, not live, a day or two, whatever is the minimum sense delay there, and play it in front of as large a gathering as we can manage. That's not much because of our resources, we don't have resources. So we need to think more how to just go out of just closed door meeting between civil societies. As I said, a lot of this happens. A lot of the flyers also get generated during and before. But we need to put pressure on so-called parties and actors. We are outside that acting part. So that's our limitation.
Maybe I didn't make myself clear. I was thinking if the civil society groups from countries like India, South Africa, and other like-minded countries could interact with civil society groups from the countries who are not in agreement or who are not wanting to or who want to demolish the Kyoto Protocol and other such mechanisms, and encourage them to talk to their governments. It's not just interaction for the sake of interaction, or which is ongoing process, which is very much appreciated, and so it needs to go one step further, is what I'm saying.
That's what happens. That's what actually happens. In fact, last year when Japan, Russia, Australia, Canada, they said we will walk out of Kyoto, that kind of thing happened. Civil society groups from Japan and Australia, they put up a lot of demands that please don't reconsider this. So that kind of thing, as I'm saying, this happens. But we need to invent other mechanisms where the pressure builds up from other sides. Maybe the sensitivity also increases.
Yeah, Rob wants to help us with trying to give us some insights on how we can influence the actors and negotiators. Go on.
You don't know what I'm going to say. But nice try. No, I just want to endorse what has been said. This is an ongoing process, and I'm certainly not here to defend the US government, but I could certainly defend a lot of US groups and also states. I mean, one of the things, of course, we are normally doing is, okay, we look at Washington and they are the bad guys and nothing is happening in the US. It's not true. If you look beyond the US, if you look at the West Coast, California, and Washington State, Oregon, if you look at the East Coast, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, a lot is happening. A lot is happening by US industry. So it's certainly not, and also pressure groups, societal groups. I lived 4 years in the US before I came to India. So, and this can be stepped up, as you said. But believe me, they're already harassing the senators and also the Secretary of State and others there. So, but I think what is important, and I certainly would like to recommend it to you, is not just to say, okay, share what they could be doing towards their government in terms of what you are worried about, but also to tell. And because what I just said about America is also true for India. I mean, in the U.S. Senate, they still believe that India is not doing anything, or China for that matter. That's not true either. I mean, there's a lot happening here. If you look at Himachal Pradesh or other states, there's a lot happening here as well. The problem is, it's not known, or they don't want to know, and then they can just keep their rhetoric, oh, we're not engaging because India's not doing anything or China's not doing anything. I think if you can give some real information, which apparently Indian government is not willing or not wanting to give, because they have their other occupations in terms of not to be too much upfront in the discussion for other reasons. I think you could help your colleagues by giving good, sound information what's happening in India on litigation and on adaptation to show to their senators and say, hey, you're wrong. So I think this, I would say, can step up, because then they can say to the senators, you completely, your information is outdated. Look here, this and this and this. Can I have another minute?
Yeah, sure.
Because I would like to react to the point made about the Security Council. India opposed to have this discussed in the Security Council, climate change. I don't know whether you know, but just as an objective fact. The second thing on science, as you know, I work a lot and with pleasure with Toxic Link, but there I don't agree. There's a lot of science already. Okay, that we don't know 100% of the science, I can agree to you, but if by the time we know 100%, we are too late to do something about it. That's why we invented in Europe the precautionary principle. So if you don't know 100% what's coming your way, you better err on the safe side and take measures, because there's always no regret, as we call it. I mean, even if you take measures which then at the end of the day may be a little bit too far from whatever point of view, from an environment point of view, economic point of view, probably combination, you're still on the right side. So where I understand, and of course everybody supports also that there is another assessment coming up by the IPCC, but if you really are serious, then it is a golden opportunity for everybody to say, okay, let's delay action on climate change because we don't have enough science. So I don't think you meant that, but this is a dangerous road. I would recommend we are a bit more careful in that sense. Now on the Himalayas, I just come from Bhutan, well not just, I wish, this weekend, from the Bhutan Climate Summit. With the 4 main players, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan and Nepal. They agreed on a framework plan program for cooperation on food, biodiversity, energy and water. Quite elaborated except for water. And I don't know, I wasn't there in the negotiations, but some birds on my shoulder told me that the water is very poorly developed because of India. So here you can do also some pressure. Why in such a sensitive area as the East Himalayas, India is apparently, according to what I've heard, playing such a modest, if not lukewarm role. You are depending, you and me as well, by living here. We are, as you said, we are depending very much on the water coming from the Himalayas for agriculture, etc. in North India. I don't understand why this balance is happening, not only because it's not very fair to 3 neighbors, but I would say it's apparently not a good appreciation of the self-interest of India to not take this 4-country cooperation so seriously as it should be. So these are just a few comments.
Earlier, Ajay mentioned that India has been moving away from G77, coming closer to basic. But in the context of the Security Council debate, it was not India alone which opposed it, it was G77 and China together. They have consistently held, and we support that position, that climate crisis is a issue, environmental issue, which UNEP should deal with, not the Security Council. What I was hinting at when I was done talking about security narrative is that when one is caught or frozen in the nation-state framework, that nation-state framework, that debates and negotiations end up in the Security Council, which we find problematic because environmental concerns must be addressed at the right forum, and the right forum is UNFCCC and UNEP, and not the Security Council. And there, the unity of the G77 and China is it's something which we celebrate. Thank you.
Sumit,
A friend from European Union was talking of cooperation in Bhutan between among the 4 countries. In fact, that time I recalled that in April 2010, there was the SAR conference, and the theme of the conference was climate change and green South Asia. All the governments spoke quite a lot about cooperation, and before that also there was that South Asian Action Plan on Climate Change. I was wondering if the civil society from South Asia, they can put pressure on the governments to implement what they have been speaking so loudly and so in such an articulate manner also.
My question was to Mr. Robert Dunkers. Currently India-EU trade negotiations, bilateral trade negotiations are going on, and one is reading from the business newspapers that it is likely to be concluded next year, early next year. Is climate a concern in the trade negotiations between India and EU? Are environmental goods and services which are sensitive to climate crisis, are they being negotiated? Or is it purely commercial negotiation. Thank you.
Sustainable development issues, and that includes environment goods, etc. But also some social issues are being proposed by the European Union to be part of the FTA. You can read the rest of the sentence yourself.
No, a small addition that does it include carbon trade also? Thank you.
I think I was clear.
Naga can probably respond to what you said about the civil society initiative, that we are articulating the positions and what is our experience. We had this experience from last 2.5 years.
Yeah, if since now it's time for tea, we can take that up in I think over tea also.
I think that the South African.
Yeah, I was coming.
Thank you. I just want.
So I just want to comment on the very good questions that was raised around the issue of national states. In fact, I think it goes wider than that. It's not only national states and national priorities and national state positions, but it's also regional positions, such as the European Union, which very much speak from when it comes to climate change, at least in forums such as trying to speak with one voice. Unfortunately, I think that's the paradigm in which the international world moves at this stage. Priorities of nation states taken forward to organizations such as the Security Council, taken national positions which are taken forward in discussions such as climate change. But I'd just like to come back to a point which I raised in my presentation, that it's the aim and what South Africa are looking at and what's important for us as a country hosting this event and taking over the chairpersonship. And I'd just like to quote, in order to unblock issues in these negotiations, parties will need to move beyond national positions and make compromises in order to forge consensus positions. That's very much what we as South Africa are advocating, which we have advocated at the various international meetings in the build-up to this conference. What we have advocated by the appointment of Mr. Vali Musa by our incoming chairperson as our troubleshooter, to go and find out what our countries state many things. Unfortunately, we haven't picked up, as was correctly said. We've been monitoring the media and the debate within India, and there's not much information out there as to what the Indian position is going to be at COP. So we've been monitoring that, but we want to find out, and that's what Mr. Vali was, what are the countries thinking, not just what they are saying openly, but in the discussions, in the negotiations, as was mentioned earlier. Once a negotiator, once countries are in the discussions face to face, what are the bottom lines that the different countries have? And that's something which we have tried as South Africa, to find out what are those positions, so that when we come to those negotiations, South Africa can play a bridging role, can try and bring the countries, can try and bring the positions together. So that is something which we've been trying to bring a position, a uniqueness to this event, which we've tried to bring forward. There was also the comment made earlier about the Rio Plus 10 next year in June. As far as I'm aware, there's no, this is what's taking place in COP17 is the pre-runner to next year. Next year Kyoto ends. There's no second chance with the Rio Plus 10. Rio Plus 10's main focus is sustainable development, while there are obviously many cross-linkages. This is what is on the table. If we need to get something, either a way forward, either a position at the end of it, or a way forward, it needs to come out of these discussions in Durban. So it's of fundamental importance what is going to transpire in the next few weeks. There was also a comment made earlier, and I'd just like to relate to it, is on the importance on women, and I'd very much like to get the contributors card, because this is a very important focus, specifically by by the incoming chairperson, Minister Mashabane, is the role of women. The role of women in India, the role of women in Africa. They're fundamental to the agricultural approach. So this is really very important to us. And our minister has stressed, in fact, she gave a presentation in this week to Women From Africa presentation, and linking it into the importance of climate change and the role which women have got to play. And I think if you follow the debate, if you follow what is going to come out in the statements that are made by South Africa at the upcoming COP, you're going to see the centrality of women affairs of the role of women into the whole climate change debate. It's something which we would like to see elevated within the debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bulu, you want to say something? You share something?
Well, I would like to congratulate you for organizing this discourse at a very opportune time, and very frank and forthright sharings by the three eminent countries here and the representative EU. I'm not an expert on climate change, but I work with children. As you know, World Vision works with children, and I fully reiterate and endorse what Manish has said, about the status of nutrition in the country. And in fact, we've been following it up at various fora. Very recently at G20, and World Vision is taking up these climate issues at different levels. But in India, I would like to say that this is a very significant thing for us, because we work with 5,300 communities across 24 states. And as we know, the children, women particularly, and families are affected by the changing climate situation and the crisis that is coming up, affecting all kinds of lives in the country. And we are willing to work with smaller groups, bigger groups, whoever, in pushing up this with the government, because I particularly look at the external engagement at World Vision. So I'm fully aware of what is happening. In fact, what was shared about the humanitarian approach of the Security Council, and Ambassador Puri has taken it up as a very important aspect of it, because this is a humanitarian emergency that we are now looking at. No more there are cold wars. So the Security Council is also taking it up as an issue, and I think we can push it at different levels. And of course, we would like to know what is the response of the country, the domestic situation here. Now the Parliament is sitting, and we would like to know if you're able to raise any questions, if at all any help is required in that. We would be willing to do that. So I wish you all the best for this upcoming preparation, and wish you all the best, sir, for hosting it. And I hope there will be a successful outcome of this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I join Bolo in wishing all the best to South Africa in organizing this important COP17 at Durban. We are very grateful to Mr. Mark Reinhardt for your presence and time. And we are also very grateful to Rob Donkers, Charlie Pop, and Mr. Briscoe from Embassy of Italy. With this, we invite all of you to over tea in the next room. And we are also very thankful to all the participants for their contribution and active participation. We look forward to continue the discussion with you after tea. Thank you very much. So please come and join us for tea.